She was only 6 years old when the world turned against her. On the very day she buried her father, her stepmother's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You don't belong here." A small girl, clutching a tattered stuffed bunny, was cast out onto the street as if her grief meant nothing. Neighbors watched in silence, the sun still shining while her world crumbled. But fate has a way of sending light into the darkest corners. At that very moment, a black car stopped. Inside sat a man who had just lost his best friend. What he saw made his blood boil, and in that instant his life and hers would be forever intertwined. This is not just a story about cruelty. It is a story about second chances, about love discovered where it is least expected. Stay with us. Subscribe to Hidden Echo Stories for more. The late afternoon sun spilled across the cobblestone streets of Savannah, Georgia, washing everything in golden light. The city seemed alive with spring, with blossoms swaying in the breeze and children's laughter drifting faintly from porches down the block. But inside the Turner household, there was no warmth, no laughter. The heavy wooden door had only just swung shut after the small procession returned from the cemetery. The sound echoed in the hallway, more final than the burial itself. 6-year-old Sophie Turner stood silently in the entryway, her bare toes curled against the polished floor. In her arms she clutched a stuffed rabbit, its fur rubbed bald from years of being held, one ear hanging limp by a loose thread. Her dress still carried the faint scent of lilies from the funeral. Her wide brown eyes were swollen, her lashes sticky with dried tears, but she did not cry anymore. There was nothing left to give. She only looked toward the staircase, once a place of sunlight and laughter, now a dark tunnel that seemed to lead nowhere. Behind her, Claire Turner set her handbag down with an impatient thud, as though even the act of grieving had become an inconvenience. For nearly 2 years, Claire had played the part of devoted wife and gentle stepmother, offering sweet smiles in public and gentle pats on the shoulder when people were watching. But now, with Matthew Turner buried and the door closed, the mask slipped. Her mouth pinched into a thin, cold line, her eyes sharp with calculation. "You are still holding that filthy thing," Claire sneered, gesturing at the bunny. Her voice was icy, like a stranger had stepped into the house and stolen the place of the woman Sophie once thought might care. Sophie tightened her arms around the rabbit, pressing it into her cheek as if the worn fabric might still hold her father's scent. She did not answer. She had learned silence was safer. "Your father spoiled you," Claire continued, her words snapping like brittle twigs. "That ends today. You will learn." From the living room came a low chuckle. Vincent Shaw, Claire's business partner, leaned back lazily on the couch. His shoes were polished, his shirt carelessly unbuttoned, a glass of amber scotch dangling between his fingers. He did not look at Sophie. He did not need to. His presence was enough to fill the room with menace. "The kid looks like a ghost," he muttered. "Creepier every time I see her." Sophie's small fingers dug into the bunny's fur until her knuckles turned white. She wanted to run upstairs, to hide under her blanket and pretend her father would come through the door any minute. But Claire's shadow loomed larger, closer. "You do not belong here anymore," Claire hissed. The word struck Sophie like a slap. Before she could react, Claire snatched the bunny from her arms. Sophie gasped, stumbling forward, reaching desperately. "Please." Claire ignored her plea. She shoved the rabbit into a small duffel bag already packed with a few clothes, a toothbrush, and a single worn book. She zipped it shut and grabbed Sophie's wrist, pulling her toward the front door. The door burst open, spilling light across the yard. Sophie blinked, her eyes stinging as she was dragged outside. The neighbors glanced from behind curtains. A man trimming his hedge paused but quickly looked away, as if to say, "Not my business." The spring air smelled of honeysuckle, but to Sophie it was sharp and bitter. "You are cursed," Claire whispered viciously. "Your mother died, now your father, maybe it is you, maybe it is your fault." Sophie's lips trembled. "That is not true." Her voice was a whisper, almost drowned by the rustling leaves. Claire said nothing. Instead, she reappeared with a bucket of cold water and hurled it without warning. The icy splash soaked Sophie from head to toe. The shock stole her breath. She gasped, shivering, her hair plastered to her face, her dress clinging to her small frame. The bunny fell to the mud. Claire crossed her arms. Maybe now we have washed some of that darkness off you. It was then that tires screeched at the curb. A sleek black car halted abruptly, its engine rumbling low. The driver did not move at first. He only sat, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. Eli Whitaker, 37 years old, had not come here for this. He had come to offer condolences after laying his best friend in the ground. He had not expected to see cruelty so raw, so shameless. Through the windshield he saw her, a child drenched and trembling, clutching at nothing. A woman standing above her, arms folded, satisfaction on her face. A neighborhood watching, silent. Eli's chest tightened, rage coiling in his gut. He shoved the door open and stepped onto the path, his navy suit catching the light, crisp and tailored for meetings that now seemed meaningless. He walked quickly, each step heavier with purpose. When Sophie lifted her eyes and met his, something shifted. In that moment she saw not a stranger, but a barrier between her and the nightmare. Eli felt it too, a crack opening in the walls he had built around his heart. He slipped off his coat and draped it around her tiny shoulders. The fabric nearly swallowed her, but the warmth was real. Then his gaze locked on Claire, his jaw clenched. His voice, low and controlled, carried a weight that silenced the air. "She is coming with me." Claire stiffened. "Excuse me, she is not your child." Eli took another step, his eyes cold as steel. "She was his child, and he was my best friend since I was 14. Less than 24 hours after his burial, you threw his daughter into the street like garbage. I will not stand by and watch." For the first time, Claire faltered, but Eli did not wait for her permission. Sophie's small hand slid into his, trembling but certain, and in that fragile grip, Eli knew with absolute clarity he could not walk away. Not now, not ever. The city skyline shimmered as the elevator rose quietly to the top of the Whitaker Tower. Inside, Sophie stood stiffly beside Eli, his coat draped around her narrow shoulders. Her wet dress clung to her. Her hair matted from the water Claire had thrown. She did not ask where they were going. She did not ask anything. Her lips were pressed tightly together, and in her hands she clutched her stuffed rabbit like a lifeline. When the elevator doors slid open, the penthouse revealed itself with its glass walls and polished hardwood floors. To most, it would have felt like a sanctuary of wealth and order. To Sophie, it felt like another strange world she did not belong in. She hovered near the door, her eyes darting nervously as if she expected to be cast out again. Eli noticed. He crouched down to her level, softening his voice. "You can sit anywhere you like. You are safe here." She did not move at first. When he reached to untie her soaked shoes, she flinched instinctively, pulling her feet back as if expecting pain. That small reaction hit Eli harder than he expected. It was not just fear in her movements, it was habit, ingrained by too many moments of cruelty. He inhaled slowly, steadying himself. "I will grab you a towel," he said gently. He disappeared down the hallway and returned with 2 thick white towels, wrapping one around her shoulders. He draped another across the sofa and guided her toward it with patience, not force. Sophie perched on the edge, her legs dangling, her body trembling as if the towel itself weighed too much. Eli retreated to the kitchen, poured chicken broth into a small saucepan, and set it on the stove. He was supposed to be preparing for a meeting that could shift the course of his company, but none of that mattered now. His eyes kept flicking back to the girl on the sofa, so small and silent beneath the towel. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, heavier than any boardroom. When the soup was ready, he set it gently before her. "Just try a little," he said softly. "You do not have to finish it." Sophie hesitated, her hands trembling as she reached for the spoon. She stared into the broth as though it might vanish. Her first sip was cautious, almost suspicious, but the warmth spread through her, and she took another, then another. Eli watched her closely, though he pretended not to. After her third spoonful, something shifted. For just a second her eyes lifted and met his. Then her hand reached out tentatively and brushed against his. It was the smallest gesture, but it broke something inside him. His throat tightened, his breath caught. He did not speak. He only let her hand rest against his until she was ready to pull it away. Later that night, Eli offered her a guest room with blankets tucked neatly across the bed. Sophie refused to lie under the covers. Instead, she curled up at the foot of the bed, knees hugged to her chest, her rabbit pressed tightly against her. She looked as though she expected someone to drag her away if she closed her eyes. "I will stay right outside," Eli promised. He sat in the hallway, leaning against the wall, the door cracked open so she could see him if she needed. For an hour he stayed there, his eyes heavy but his mind racing. He thought of Matt, the boy who once saved him from the loneliness of foster care, the man he buried only yesterday. Matt had been his anchor, and now, without meaning to, Sophie had become his. The silence was broken by a rustle from the bedroom. Eli peeked in. Sophie had finally crawled beneath the blanket, her rabbit tucked under her chin. Relief settled over him, but then he noticed something odd. A seam along the rabbit's side had split slightly. Inside, something metallic glinted. Kneeling carefully, Eli inspected it. Sophie stirred awake, her eyes wide with alarm. "It is from my dad," she whispered quickly, clutching the toy protectively. "I will not break it," Eli assured her. "Let us see together." With slow, deliberate movements, he eased the seam open and pulled out a small silver USB drive. His pulse quickened. It seemed impossibly heavy for its size. Sophie's eyes widened. "Daddy gave it to me before he got sick," she said. "He told me never to lose it." Eli stared at the drive, his mind already racing with possibilities. "Do you want to know what is inside?" he asked. Sophie nodded once. He tucked it safely away. "Then we will find out tomorrow, together." The next morning, golden light streamed into the penthouse. Sophie sat quietly on the sofa, her gaze fixed on the USB resting on the counter. Eli poured warm milk into 2 mugs and placed one before her. "We do not have to look yet," he said gently, but her small voice trembled as she answered, "I want to know." He connected the USB to his laptop. A single audio file appeared, dated 1 year earlier. He pressed play. Matt Turner's voice filled the room, weary and broken. "Claire, what is this medication? My heart is racing. I cannot think clearly." Then came Vincent's low, flat reply, "Just take it, Matt. Do not be paranoid." A pause followed. Then Claire's whisper, chilling in its calmness, "Let him drink it. The sooner he is gone, the better." Sophie's gasp was sharp and fragile. Her rabbit slipped from her grasp. "They poisoned my dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Panic swept her face as she backed away, her breath shallow and quick. Eli moved to her side instantly. He knelt, steadying her with his hands on her shoulders. "Breathe with me," he said softly. "In, out, slowly." She mirrored him, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. When she calmed, she whispered, He knew something was wrong." Eli swallowed hard, his own chest tight. "And he left this for you," he said, "because he trusted you, because he wanted the truth to be found." He sealed the USB in a fireproof envelope, locking it in his desk. Sophie retrieved her rabbit and pressed it tightly to her chest. "I thought I lost him," she murmured, "but he left something for me." Eli's voice faltered as he answered, "You were never really alone." That day, Eli called his attorney, Paul Granger, a man whose precision and quiet determination had saved him more than once. He also contacted Emily Rhodes, a librarian with a gift for uncovering the hidden trails within public records. Slowly, a small circle formed around them. Sophie, once silenced and invisible, became the center of a growing fight for justice. That evening, Sophie drew a picture on one of Eli's notepads, 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a house, herself, her father, and Eli. Beneath it, in uneven letters, she wrote one word, us. She slid the drawing across the table. Eli stared at it for a long time before pinning it to the refrigerator door. He did not speak. He only smiled, and Sophie smiled too, just faintly. For the first time, the smile stayed. The courthouse loomed with its tall columns casting long shadows across the morning pavement. Inside, the family court wing hummed with low conversations, the shuffle of papers, and the nervous coughs of people waiting for their names to be called. Sophie sat quietly on a wooden bench, her small legs swinging above the floor, her rabbit clutched tight in her arms. Her face was calm, but not the calm of peace, the calm of a child who had already endured too much to be shaken by another room of strangers. Beside her, Eli sat upright, his suit pressed but his jaw tense. He had fought boardroom battles before, but nothing compared to this. This was not about numbers or deals. This was about a promise to a little girl who had lost everything. When Sophie's hand slipped into his, he gave her a reassuring squeeze. Quiet strength passed between them, unspoken but certain. Across the hall, Claire sat in black, her makeup flawless, her posture rehearsed, her lawyer whispering strategies into her ear. Vincent Shaw leaned back, adjusting his cufflinks, a faint smirk playing at his lips as though he still believed money and influence could shield him. When the bailiff finally opened the doors, the air seemed to hold its breath. Everyone filed inside. Judge Marcia Clean, sharp-eyed and composed, took her seat at the bench. The gavel struck once and the hearing began. Claire's attorney, Avery Clark, rose first. His voice was smooth, polished, practiced. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Claire Turner, is the child's legal guardian. Mr. Eli Whittaker, though perhaps well-meaning, acted without consent and removed Sophie Turner from her home. This was not compassion. This was interference." Eli's jaw tightened, but he remained silent as Paul Granger, his own attorney, rose. Calm and measured, Paul spoke with quiet authority. "Your Honor, what happened was not interference. It was protection. We will present testimony, evidence, and an audio recording made by the late Matthew Turner himself, which proves that Sophie was not safe in her stepmother's care." The judge raised an eyebrow. "An audio recording?" Paul nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. Entrusted to his daughter in a way only a desperate father would think to do, hidden inside her toy rabbit." A ripple of whispers moved across the courtroom. Paul set a small speaker on the table and pressed play. The sound of Matt Turner's voice filled the chamber, shaky and strained. "Claire, what is this medication? My chest feels heavy, I cannot think straight." Then came Vincent's voice, cold and dismissive. "Just drink it, Matt, do not make this harder." And finally, Claire's whisper, chilling in its calmness, "Let him drink it. The sooner he is gone, the better." The room fell silent. Claire's face went pale, her composure cracking for the first time. Vincent shifted uncomfortably, his smirk gone. A gasp escaped from the back row where reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks. Judge Clean leaned forward. "Has this recording been verified?" Paul handed over documents. "Yes, Your Honor. The metadata has been confirmed by digital forensic experts. The file is authentic. The timestamp matches the week Mr. Turner was admitted to the hospital." Claire opened her mouth as if to protest, but her lawyer placed a firm hand on her arm. Vincent, however, stood abruptly, his voice sharp with desperation. "This is fabricated. Anyone could have made this. You are all being manipulated." The judge struck the gavel. "Sit down, Mr. Shaw." Paul remained calm. "We also have hospital records, forged signatures on stock transfers, and testimony from neighbors who witnessed Sophie being abused. We have evidence that Mr. Shaw tampered with a vehicle belonging to Mrs. Turner, further tying him to the death of Matthew Turner." The weight of the truth hung in the room. Claire's composure shattered. Her hands shook, her voice rising into a shrill cry. "She hated me. She never wanted me as her mother. She is lying." The bailiff stepped closer as the judge's voice cut through the noise. "Enough." The verdict came swiftly. Judge Clean's words fell heavy. "In light of overwhelming evidence of abuse, fraud, and endangerment, I order the immediate detention of Claire Turner and Vincent Shaw. Charges include child endangerment, conspiracy, and tampering with evidence related to the death of Matthew Turner." Gasps filled the courtroom as Claire collapsed into sobs, mascara streaking down her face. Vincent fought against the cuffs but was restrained by two bailiffs. Reporters scrambled, cameras flashing as the two were led away in disgrace. In the chaos, Sophie turned into Eli's chest, her small body trembling. Her voice was barely audible. "Do I have anyone left?" Eli bent low, holding her tightly. His voice cracked but remained steady. "You have me. From this day forward, you always will." Judge Clean cleared her throat, her voice firm but softened with something almost human. "Mr. Whitaker, pending a full guardianship review, this court grants you emergency custody of Sophie Turner, effective immediately." The gavel struck once more, sealing the decision. Outside the courthouse, headlines spread like wildfire. Millionaire CEO exposes plot. Child saved from stepmother's cruelty. But Eli did not care about the cameras or the flashing lights. He cared only about the little hand gripping his sleeve, the quiet whisper against his chest. "Can we go home now?" Home was not the penthouse, not anymore. Home was where Sophie felt safe. Together, they returned to the old Turner house. It had been filled with shadows, but now it was filled with light. Neighbors who once turned away arrived with tools, curtains, books, and food. Dorothy sewed quilts. Franklin repaired cabinets. Emily stacked shelves with donated books. Linda from the cafe brought warm bread and apple pies. The house began to change. The laughter of children returned. Sophie's own giggles, timid at first, slowly grew stronger, echoing down the halls. Eli watched her roll pale yellow paint across the walls, her cheeks dusted with flecks of color, her eyes brighter than he had ever seen. One evening she drew another picture. This time the house was not gray and broken. It was warm, golden, alive. People filled it, Dorothy, Franklin, Emily, Linda, and at the center, Eli holding her hand. At the top, in uneven letters, she wrote, "Our house." When she handed it to him, Eli placed his hand over hers. His voice was steady, but his heart was full. "It really is ours now." That night, as Sophie lay beneath a quilt stitched with stars, she whispered before sleep claimed her, "It does not smell like her anymore." Eli sat quietly in the hall, his eyes stinging, his chest tight. He opened his laptop and typed a single line, "Harbor Light Center, a place where no child is ever turned away." Outside, a new sign gleamed faintly in the porch light. Inside, Sophie finally slept without fear. And for the first time in years, Eli felt the hollow inside him begin to fill. There are moments in life when the world seems determined to break a soul. For Sophie, that moment came when she was cast into the street with nothing but a stuffed rabbit in her arms and grief heavier than her tiny shoulders could carry. She had every reason to believe she was alone, unwanted, forgotten. But the truth of this story is not about abandonment. It is about what happens when love steps into the places cruelty has left empty. Eli did not come searching for a daughter. He came to mourn a friend. Yet in the quiet cry of a child, in the trembling of her small hand, he found something greater than grief. He found a purpose. He became not only the protector of a memory but the guardian of a future. Sophie's journey from despair to belonging is not just hers. It is a reminder of the resilience that lives in every heart, waiting for a spark of kindness to ignite it. The house that once echoed with coldness became Harbor Light Center, a beacon in the darkness, a home for children who have known too much pain too soon. It was not built with money alone but with compassion. Dorothy's gentle hand stitching quilts, Franklin's steady strength repairing what was broken, Emily's patience filling shelves with stories of hope, Linda's warmth carrying the scent of fresh bread through the halls, and at the center, Sophie, no longer a shadow of sorrow, but a child learning to laugh again. Every nail hammered, every wall painted, every small act of kindness spoke louder than cruelty ever could. What was once a place of loss became a lighthouse for those drifting, a promise that no child should ever hear the words, "You do not belong." And yet, beyond the bricks and curtains, beyond the paperwork signed in courtrooms, the greatest transformation happened quietly. in the bond between a man who thought he had lost everything and a little girl who thought she had no one left. Together, they discovered that family is not only written in blood or bound by law. Family is found in the choice to stay, to fight, to love. This story is a testament to the power of second chances. It reminds us that even in a world that can feel indifferent, there are people willing to step forward to say, "You are safe. You are wanted. You belong." If Sophie's story touched your heart, let it also remind you that these stories exist around us every day, stories of resilience, of courage, of love waiting to be chosen. And here, at Hidden Echo Stories, we will continue to bring them to life, because every heart longs to hear that it is not alone. So, if you believe in the healing power of love, in the beauty of hope, and in the quiet strength of second chances, we invite you to stay with us. Subscribe to Hidden Echo Stories and join a community where every story is a light in the darkness.